deny valid claims, because that's how they got to be billion-dollar insurance companies. If you've been injured, I'd like to help.
Spencer Callahan is the one to see. Call 387-2323.
LA filing number 16-7969.
WNXX Jackson, KNXX Donaldsonville, and WDGL HD2 Baton Rouge. This hour brought to you by Spencer Callahan Injury Lawyers. LA 21 12681. Offices in Baton Rouge. Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Waiting to rise again.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
Locking down the middle of the day. Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Friday. It means we're brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp, and fired up. You're here with us working towards the weekend. If you've reached the finish line, fired up for you. If not, we'll get you there here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Jordan Kitchens back there on the ones and twos, and plenty to do here on this Friday. Of course, got to talk to Preston Guy. He of TigerBait.com. We do that every single Friday at 1:50 and get you ready for the NFL slate to come. Fantasy football playoffs are upon us, so we'll get to some of that. Heisman thoughts. They'll award that trophy coming up tomorrow, New York City. LSU getting some transfer portal additions, potentially. Jaden Daniels going to the Superdome, and LSU and SMU on the hardwood from Dallas. We'll talk with Dean Rolski, who covers SMU 4 on 3. We'll do that an hour and a half from right now. Plus, some take it or leave it and some other things that may happen throughout the show. We'll start the same way we start each and every day, and that is, of course, with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Big news today from LSU as they announced via a press release, and Brian Kelly spoke about it, is that Brian Kelly and his wife, Pocky, have created a $1 million match. And what that means is, from now until the first week in February, every dollar that LSU receives for Bayou Traditions Football Fund, Brian Kelly and Pocky Kelly will match up to $1 million to LSU Athletics. Now, there are a lot of layers to this that are interesting to me. First of all, everyone has always said, in terms of paying college athletes, if one person says there's not enough money to pay all these guys, one of the immediate counters is, look at the coaches' salaries and look at the coaches' buyout. There is money. It needs to be dispersed more evenly. That's generally a cry from those who suggest there is money to pay the college athletes. And I didn't necessarily see a bunch of coaches running to the forefront to accept less money so that their players could make more. That wasn't an immediate reaction to name, image, and likeness becoming legal. And this is not Brian Kelly taking less money, but it is a strategic play on two different fronts. One, it shows his generosity and his commitment to LSU. And this is not new. Brian Kelly and his wife also gave money back in 2022, $1 million, toward the facility that the student athletes use there for performance, nutrition, all that. He donated a handful of times to Notre Dame, including $250,000 in 2010 toward a cancer research arm at Notre Dame. So this is not some brand new thing he's just cooked up to try to get more players. Brian Kelly and his wife, Pocky, have done this in the past. However, in this instance, the money comes with a clear message, and it's one that Brian Kelly has talked about a lot. We'll first hear it from Brian Kelly, and then I'll go further into this donation and kind of the effects of it. This is Brian Kelly from earlier today.
Well, I figured that after my last press conference where I pretty much challenged the entire LSU fan base that if they wanted to continue to have a championship program, that they needed to understand that there's a financial responsibility as well, that I needed to put my money where my mouth was and be part of that as well. And so that's the genesis of that relative to the $1 million. So my wife and I are going to match up to $1 million, new monies that are donated through NIL that are earmarked for football, so we can be competitive in that space. I thought that it should start with me and then continue to work through all the other avenues that are available to us.
It's admirable any way you slice it for Brian Kelly. I know he signed for $100 million, so one is a tenth of that. No, sorry, 100th of that, a tenth of his annual salary. I get that, but still, it's $1 million that Brian Kelly is putting into the university. And there is a rule from the NCAA that prohibits coaches from directly contributing money to collectives or student athletes. So what Brian Kelly is doing is he says, hey, if you contribute to the student athletes in our collective for our football players, I will help you on the other end with LSU athletics as a whole. Because he's not allowed to go directly to football, but he is allowed to donate his own money to the university's athletic programs, and that's what he's doing. And while it is incredibly generous, and I want to lead with that, it really is, it also sends a message that, hey, we do need your money, and I'm part of this. And in a sense, it is a little bit of a coach cutting his money to help pay on the back end. And it's a challenge in the same way. And I think that LSU fans will hear this. I think those of you who listen to me regularly understand that I very rarely use this term. I would say maybe once a month. Maybe once a month, I say, I had a conversation with someone who would know, and this is what I learned. I say that about once a month. Y'all listen to me. Y'all know that I'm not some sort of insider who's breaking news and has the scoop, and that's just not necessarily where I am at this point in my career as I do this job. That day may come, but it's not today. I have relationships at LSU. I get a paycheck from LSU on football season. Like, I rarely go, inside sources are telling me this. But I did have a conversation this week, and I can tell you that LSU has raised a lot of money for the football program through the collective in the last 30 days. That's not some report I'm reading from somewhere else. That's not someone in the media told me this. That comes from over there. Okay? They're doing very, very well with fundraising, but it's got to continue. And that message has to continue to ring true. And if you are Brian Kelly and you know that part of your job is being a fundraiser, and that is part of his job now. Maybe it always was, but more so now. It's very difficult to go to the same people who are helping pay you $100 million over 10 years saying, hey, I need more, like, thanks for that, but we got to have a left tackle. So where's some more money? It's easier to have that conversation if Brian Kelly goes to that donor and says, hey, you've done very well. I've done very well. I can't help with this on this end, but I can do this, and this is the example that I need y'all to follow if we want to do this together. And that's a conversation that, quite frankly, I'm confident he didn't think he was ever going to have when he got into coaching 35 years ago at Assumption or wherever it was. Like, did you ever think at that point in the 80s that you were going to have to go to a donor and say, I know I make $100 million. You've got a lot too. We have to pay all our players like $8, $9, $10, $20 million in total to keep this team relatively competitive with Georgia and Texas A&M. Relatively competitive with Miami and Ohio State, who we think we fancy ourselves as competitive with on the national scale. Like, we have to continue to pay that money. Like, that's a tough conversation to have, but it becomes easier once you show, hey, I'm willing to do this. And I think it's admirable. I think, and look, I'm trying to be as level-headed as I can here. I think there is a pie. There's a pie graph. And when you suggest, why is Brian Kelly giving this $1 million to Tiger Athletics? There's a piece of the pie that's just understanding the financial position he's put himself in through decades of hard work. and the obligation or the opportunity, however you want to look at it, to give back. That's obviously there. It was there back 14 years ago when he gave $250,000 to Notre Dame for cancer research. That didn't help him get a wide receiver. There is that element to it. There's an element of I need to motivate the fan base. There's an element of I need to put my money where my mouth is. And there's an element of this is my last chance to win a national championship. This is the only way. And how that pie breaks out, it doesn't really matter. It just is what it is. And again, we're going to find out over the next 2 weeks just how game LSU is. This is a new world for this football program. As of 5 months ago, I'm confident the football program believed we can do this, signing a bunch of 4- and 5-star kids every single December. And at some point, whether that was getting beat on the field, whether that was starting too many freshmen this year, whether that was Bryce Underwood pulling the rug out at the 11th hour, somewhere along the line, they figured out, nope, we got to change the way we're operating. And they're trying to do it a little bit on the fly, and this is part of that. Again, I'm told things are going really well over there. But the proof has to be in the pudding. Because if you have a big war chest of money and it just stays full, it's pretty worthless in this instance. You're not accruing interest over there that's going to be beneficial to anybody. The money has to go into the war chest and come out of the war chest. LSU got a signature from Bauer Sharp today. That's one. And I said this yesterday on my show. I said we will very likely have a commitment in the next 24 hours and certainly through the weekend. And I still feel that way. I don't think Bauer Sharp is the end. I think it's very much the beginning. But you're going to have to see that as these visits happen, as these NIL offers are made, and as you continue to play ball. I think Garrett Nussmeier was part of playing ball. Brian Kelly talked about that today, saying they thought they put a pretty good NIL opportunity in front of him. But you got to keep going. You got Bauer Sharp at tight end. Got to keep going. Looks like you're probably going to get a center. Got to keep going. Looks like you're probably going to get a wide receiver. Got to keep going. Looks like you're probably going to get a cornerback. Got to keep going. And I'm going to talk about all this in the second hour. But I think Brian Kelly today did something very, very admirable. I thought it was creative from LSU's perspective. And the question is, how effective will it be? Will it spur, whether it's very, very wealthy donors or the grassroots effort, hundreds of dollars at a time with thousands of people at a time, to keep filling that war chest up to go get football players? Gone are the days where you as a season ticket holder and you as the booster can sit back and just hope that the team gets some good players. You have to be part of that now. And that's a difficult thing to hear, and some people are against it. It does not change the reality. And I thought Brian Kelly today took a good step for LSU, and I think you're probably, in one way or another, going to see other coaches doing this, whether they copy this model, saying, hey, you give $1 million, I'll give $1 million over here, or theoretically, you could see a day where a coach says, instead of agreeing to take a $7.8 million salary, I'll take 7 straight up, and we'll put that $800,000 in the war chest because I need players and I can't do this without them. That day remains to be seen. Today, we saw Brian Kelly start his way. That's our opening drive presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge. Come back with Preston Guy, TigerBait.com on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is that website. If you're doing some traveling over the holidays and you don't want to put a bunch of miles on your car, what about a Genesis? It could be your opportunity to get behind the wheel of a make and model that you've never driven before.
Looking for the ultimate game day experience? Come to the Queen Casino in Baton Rouge. Save for game day platters and snacks, plus drink specials at 1717 Kitchen and Cocktail. So come out for game day and let our team make you the MVP. The Queen Casino, where every moment is a win.
I've been doing business with Luba for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals. But many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes Luba a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Jerry and Benny Payne began Central Plumbing Company out of their driveway in Tanglewood subdivision. 50 years later and 4 generations down the road, we continue to serve Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas for all of their plumbing needs. Residential, commercial, industrial, or hospitality, Central Plumbing is here 24/7, 365.
We want to thank our customers, family, and friends for 50 years of success.
And looking forward to 50 more.
Dylan Cruz here to tell you about Six Rings Baseball and Softball Camp. If you live on the North Shore and play ball, go to Six Rings Camps with former LSU assistant coach Dan Canaveri. His knowledge is second to none, and your child will improve and have fun doing it. Camps were held at Coquille Park and Six Rings Academy in Covington with 4 sessions over the summer. Full day and morning only sessions are available from ages 7 to 13. Go to sixringsbaseball.com or call 985-206-9096. Learn the game to love the game.
BRAC teamed up to reimagine your parks, and you imagined big. With your help, we went to work, creating 12 beautiful community parks across the parish. A family-sized water park, miles and miles of trails, and parks just for your dogs. There are more places to splash, to explore, to run wild, and even soar. You imagined, we...
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Here on a Friday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. We'll preview LSU and SMU tomorrow from Dallas. Actually, not from Dallas, from Frisco. Part of a fake home and home between LSU and SMU. LSU will travel to Frisco for Saturday's game. SMU will return that trip next year over in New Orleans. Big matchup for LSU and the Mustangs. Last chance in non-conference play for LSU to play a Power 5 team. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Talking some football with Preston Guy, TigerBait.com right now. Preston, thanks for the time. How are you?
Hey, Hunt, how are you? Just a slow little portal week.
It's a lot. It is. I just don't feel like I can sit down on the couch without my phone blowing up from a tweet or a guy going in or somebody going out, or it's just it's a lot. How are you reacting to all the comings and goings at this point?
Oh, Hunt, the thing is that this time of year there's so much moving on behind the scenes and so much woulda, coulda, shouldas, and it seems like every player that enters the portal, it seems like every fan base is in that comment section saying, "Oh, this would be perfect for us. Oh, he's a Sooner. Oh, he's a Tiger," and it's just a lot of wild movement that, frankly, goes down very quickly. But, it's a little different this time of year, especially with LSU's getting a lot more aggressive in the portal than they were a year ago. There's a lot more funding devoted to it, and I think that coaches feel a lot of pressure to use the portal to make a team that can compete for the playoffs next year. And there's a lot of holes that need to be filled to get there.
Is there a departure, before we get to the potential additions or positions, is there a departure that surprised you or concerns you most?
C.J. Daniels, I think, is the one that you look at the most so, and you're like, well, that stinks. There's a handful of other guys, but the way I look at it, Hunt, so 19 players exited LSU and went to the portal last year. If you had to guess, without just looking this up, how many of those ended up as starters at their new school a year ago?
6.
How about 2?
I mean, yeah. And I don't even know where they all went, so yeah.
Well, right, of course. And I mean, it's not a thing until I looked up the other day, and I was like, saw someone posted about it. I was like, man, so really it was Lance Hurd was one of the two guys who actually was a starter. And, even him, he ranked toward the bottom in the Pro Football Focus numbers on their offensive line.
Yeah.
So, it tends to be one of those things of like, yeah, you're going to lose some guys. Most of them are going to be depth pieces. And there's not really too much that you're losing that truly concerns me.
What about Deshaun Womack? What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I'm hearing that he was not fitting in very well. I heard there were some attitude concerns, and there were certain road trips this team made while he was healthy. He didn't even make the trip with the team.
Right.
So, those are all pretty big red flags. I'm told by some people from behind the scenes that, that was a good thing for him to hit the portal. LSU would be a better team for it. So, you hate to talk too negatively about a kid, but
Right.
that is kind of the scuttlebutt around him. And, I guess a lot of fans, their concerns, the concerns of losing a former 5-star get a little compounded when he ends up at Mississippi, Ole Miss, I should say. But ultimately, I was just hearing it's not cutting out. It's not working out for him here at LSU. And if he's a problem with the culture, then it's hard to debate that LSU would be better off without him.
All right, let's talk about what LSU needs to do in the transfer portal. They get Bauer Sharp today, and Brian Kelly was actually allowed to talk about Bauer Sharp at tight end. That was obviously a must. You can comment. I guess we'll start there. What do you think about Bauer Sharp and where LSU is at tight end right now?
Well, we're talking about a guy who caught 42 balls in that Oklahoma offense, and we saw firsthand just how anemic that offense was for Oklahoma. So really good, big body, athletic guy. A guy who's going to come in and compete with Trey'Dez Green to be the starting tight end. And, you need Kamorian Pimpton hitting the portal. That's probably the second most concerning behind C.J. Daniels. But, you need someone else to complement Trey'Dez Green. This is not a one tight end offense. It just is not, especially Trey'Dez kind of taking on some of the roles of almost like a receiver at times, not being a true blocker. Bauer Sharp will be a better blocker than him. But, outside of tight end, tight end definitely became a concern because you're down to one guy and J.D. LaFleur coming in, who's a developmental prospect guy. I don't think he's a year one plug-and-play starter at tight end. You needed a tight end or two. And I think they're still going to be talking to some tight ends, and we'll see. But I think offensive line, especially now that Emory Jones is formally in the portal, that's a concern. You need 4 starters out of somewhere, right? Whether you're returning depth chart, your offensive line class, or the portal, I would say you probably going to need a starter from each at least. So a lot of work to be done on that front. Much worse so than tight end.
What about wide receiver right now when you look at the situation where LSU's still got some players there that have played a lot with Thomas and then Anderson and probably Hilton and then Parker and Jelani Watkins? Like you have 5 or 6 guys, but what needs to be done there?
Yeah, you need quality, not quantity at receiver. I think you've got your bodies. Shelton Sampson hits the portal. I think we all had that writing on the wall. It's been 2 years, and he had every opportunity to show out, especially this year with all the injuries, and just showed you nothing. So I think that the writing was on the wall there. I think you need to get a guy who's got a chance to be wide receiver 1. Now, I feel good about LSU's opportunity with the Kentucky wide receiver, Barry Brown.
Yeah.
I was feeling good about Micah Hudson, but here's the thing with LSU in their portal. LSU is getting aggressive and is investing in getting good players here for the portal. They want them. But, when a school like Texas comes in and, they get these just wild prices that they're willing to invest, LSU just steps away because LSU does have finite funds. And if a school's willing to pay a ridiculous amount of money, LSU is taking the attitude of, look, there's plenty of other good players that we can get at a better value. And that's kind of the direction they're going. And I think that makes it tough for a guy like Micah Hudson when a school like Texas jumps in. So we'll see. I would like Barry Brown, but I would say they probably need 2 guys that are of the upper echelon of quality receivers in the portal.
To me, one of the top needs on this team is guys that can rush the passer. I look at what LSU's got on the roster right now, and I go, okay, Gabriel Relaford looks like a promising piece, and I actually do like the defensive tackle lineup right now with Guillory and the two freshmen that played this year, but they got to find somebody off the edge, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're going to have to add somebody, and there's a lot of names that they're floating out there right now. I do know there was a notable edge rusher looking like he might be heading to Colorado. LSU felt really good about their chances with him early on, a guy they recruited out of high school. It's Jaheim Otis. And I do know that one looks like it's not going anywhere anymore. Dion is the concern there, Colorado. But, they got to bring in some edge rushers for sure. That is a position where you were actually pretty good a year ago, and now you've lost so many players. You got to bring something in. You got to do something better there.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge deal. Even if you feel a little bit better about what Corey Raymond's bringing in the secondary and how they'll develop that, if you don't get after the passer, you're in a little bit of trouble there. As far as safety goes, let's talk about this safety in this bowl game because Sage Ryan is not going to play. He goes in the transfer portal. Is Deshaun Spears a guy you expect to see in the game against Baylor?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily know who else would even get that spot other than him. Especially with Kylan Jackson entering the portal. That's another guy who was a little surprising to see put his name out there, but you understand how these things go. But anyways, I think it's Deshaun Spears, and I think you'll get a good look as to whether he's set to be the guy or not next year. We'll see.
We got to talking about the portal there, and I kind of buried the lead, but not probably. The news of the week for LSU was that Garrett Nussmeier announced he's going to come back. What was your reaction to that, and what do you expect from him next year?
Yeah, I mean, look, certainly expected. Collective did good work to get him back in place. You got to think, if Nussmeier enters the portal, what ranking quarterback is he? I mean, is he not a top 5 portal guy? So,
there's no chance I could name 4 better.
Right, exactly. And you get what I mean? So you're talking about a 4,000-yard passer after the bowl game. He'll be a 4,000-yard passer. And a guy who showed some really good flashes of brilliance this year. There were moments where he could work on, and you look at the mistakes he made, and you sit there and you think, you can coach that. The problem's going to be you got to put a team around him. He needs this portal to build a team around him because he's not like a Jaden Daniels where you can plug him on a team full of, and not that Jaden Daniels was on a team full of bad players. I'm just saying Jaden Daniels can elevate a mediocre offense to be pretty good because he's a one-man army at times, right? With his ability to run. Now, Nussmeier doesn't have that ability to run and extend time. He needs an offensive line. He needs receivers who can catch the ball. And frankly, he needs a running game to where the offense can actually move and convert short yardage situations without having to rely on his arm. So, it's great that Nussmeier is coming back. I think it's the right decision for him. There was talk that he might be a fringe first rounder. I don't necessarily think I saw it based on what I watched this year, but it is a weak quarterback class. But from what I'm understanding, they're expecting it to be an even weaker class next year. So now he's got a chance to, if he steps his game up a little bit, which I looked at since 2011, all the quarterbacks who came back for their senior year. It's not just Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow who had better year. Danny Etling had a better year where he improved across the board.
Yeah.
Mettenberger improved across the board. I mean, senior quarterbacks who returned to LSU last 15 years have made some money for him. By the way, all 4 of those guys got drafted, by the way. So, pretty good results for these LSU senior quarterbacks once they stick around.
Regular season's in the rearview mirror. Preston, tell them where they can find you on YouTube. Still every Monday, or what's the story over on Tiger Bait?
Yeah, we're gonna go every Monday until signing day in February, the final signing day. Which, who knows? Maybe LSU adds a quarterback. Then we'll have something to talk about. But just through the bowl game, and then you can catch me on the post game show after the bowl game. But after that, I will be taking I do take an off-season hiatus, but y'all can always catch up with my off-season writing on TigerBait.com.
And right here every Friday at 1:15. Preston, we appreciate it. Have a great weekend, man.
All right, Hunt, take it easy.
Preston Guy, tigerbait.com. Good enough to give us a little bit of time every single Friday. Our Friday show is brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. We'll take a timeout, come back, and set the stage for the National Football League Sunday to come. Hopefully it's better than the Thursday night game we saw last night. That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.